Hello everyone, in this episode I'll be sharing with you a recipe that I've created, Hotplate Duck, or 铁板烧鸭. You can serve this on a regular plate too. However, I just think that the sizzling of the hot plate looks really nice. I've also served it with stir-fried bok choy, which I'll also show you how to prepare today. We'll start by preparing 300 grams of bok choy. Try to use baby ones as it's more tender than the adult ones. Prepare a bowl of water and add some salt to it. We're going to scrub the bok choy to get rid of any dirt, and also, if there are any worms or insects in there, the salt will draw them out. Just give them a nice soak for about 20 minutes, and then dry it off and it's ready to use. I didn't show this, but you can also cut off the roots. Now we'll process 200 grams of king oyster mushrooms. Cut the heads off from the stems and make a simple slash in the head so that we can get a flower shape in there. This just makes it look nicer, although some of you have better knife skills than me at this. Once you've got all your heads cut off, you can now slice the king oyster mushroom into diagonal slices like this. Don't worry, these pieces are not too big because they will shrink when you cook them down. We've now got our mushrooms ready. Do you like my new cutting board? This cutting board will replace the old wooden one I had. We'll start by cutting a small red onion into slices, as well as some leeks. Separate the onions into nice little slices and arrange them on the hot plate. However, for one serving we'll only need half of that. I'll show you later. Pat down the leeks, and we're going to cut off the leaves of the leeks, and we're going to save the stems for the plate as well. Alright, cut the stem up into slices. And for the leaves, we'll simply cut them up into big chunks. The leaves will be stir-fried together with the other ingredients at the end. Of course, leeks tend to have residual dirt in them, so do check and rinse them off accordingly. So we'll arrange the leeks and onions in the hot plate. However, we only need half the portion of this onion and leek for 2 servings. So you can cook this dish twice, or you can serve it twice and serve it for 4 people. Or you could just put it all on one bigger hot plate if you have one. We'll now prepare some garlic, ginger, and chilies. For the ginger, we'll cut it into small pieces and then cut those pieces into diamond-shaped pieces. Those will make them easier to stir-fry. That is about 20 grams of ginger that we're going to prepare for stir-fry. Now for the garlic cloves. You do need to peel 40 grams of garlic. We're going to cut off the heads of them, and then we're going to cut them into a few pieces. Do not crush the garlic here because we don't want the juice of the garlic to come out here. Once you've chopped up those 40 grams of garlic, you can also chop up about 20 grams of red bird's eye chilies. Actually, this is closer to 10 grams. 10 grams of bird's eye chilies, just to add some spice. If you like it less spicy, you can leave these out. Now for 20 more grams of garlic, and this time we're gonna crush them. Then mince it up. This minced garlic will be fried together with the bok choy later. Prepare one eggplant, about 250 grams. We'll cut off that top stem, as well as the very bottom. We'll then cut the eggplant into 4 segments, and then cut those segments into wedges. For the smaller segments, we'll cut them into quarters. For the bigger segments, maybe 6 pieces. And we'll put them into a bowl. The reason for using eggplants is because they absorb sauce nicely. Now, whenever you cut eggplants or potatoes, add a little bit of white vinegar and some cornstarch. That's 1 teaspoon of white vinegar and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And then mix that into the eggplants. The reason for this is so that the eggplants don't oxidize before we cook them. You can skip this step if you're cooking the eggplants immediately. We'll prepare 1 red bell pepper of about 200 grams. Cut the bell pepper in half and then remove the core. Then, cut the bell pepper into small segments and then into triangle-shaped wedges. We'll set those aside. You'll also need 50 grams of spicy soup base or 麻辣火锅底料. We're now going to chop up our duck. This is half of a duck that's been chopped up into big pieces. Now you can make this dish with chicken or pork ribs as well. We'll start by removing the toes from the foot of the duck. And then we'll smash this foot into 2 pieces. For the wing, simply disconnect the wing tip from the flat and cut through that joint. Do the same with the drumette. Cut through that wing. Now the drumette is pretty big, so you can cut off some of the meat on it and cook that as a separate little piece of meat. And then we'll chop that drumette in half. For the wing, simply cut through one of the joints and then cut through the middle to the other side so that you can separate both sides of the wing. This is a piece of the breast. We're going to cut off that boneless bit there. And then we're going to pull off the breastbone and then cut that in half. This here is the half of the head of the duck. I'm just showing you what it looks like. It can be pretty gross looking to some of you. If you don't feel comfortable cooking this, you can just leave it out. Alright, here's a piece of the backbone that I'm going to chop in half. Remove the bone from this piece of breast, and then we'll cut that up. Cut that piece of the rib cage in half. As you will see, I'm using a cleaver for this job. Please do not use a good knife for this. For the leg, I'm separating the thigh bone from the drumstick, and then separate that into 2 pieces. Cut off the excess fat from the drumstick, and then cut the drumstick in half. I'm getting out some meat from that drumstick. Removing the excess fat. And then break down that rib bone in half again. Finally, this is the duck neck. Remove the skin from the duck neck because it's very bad smelling. And remove the lymph nodes from the duck neck as well because these are also very unhealthy. Then we'll cut the neck in half. We'll get a little bit of meat off of this extra fat. And then we'll chop out the fat into small pieces. You can also discard the fat if you don't have any use for it. Now that the duck's been chopped into small pieces, we'll get some water to clean the duck. Add a little bit of baking soda, about 1 teaspoon, and then mix that into the duck. This will help us get the blood out of the bones, as well as make the duck slightly more tender. Prepare some green Sichuan peppercorns, 10 grams of dried chilies, and the following spices: 2 bay leaves, a piece of cinnamon, about 6 cloves, a teaspoon or 2 of fennel seeds, 2 pieces of star anise, and 1 piece of black cardamom. For that black cardamom, we're going to have to smash it open and get rid of the bitter seeds inside. So simply press down with the back of your knife, or cleaver, is the easiest. Put some serious weight on it, and then you should be able to pull that cardamom pod open. You can see the seeds in there, right? Here are the seeds, discard those, and here's what we're left with. We're now ready to cook. Start by boiling some water in the wok. The first thing we're going to do is add about a tablespoon of oil. This is because the first thing we're going to do is blanch the bok choy. Adding oil can preserve its green color. When the water is simmering but not boiling, add the bok choy in and let it blanch for about a minute. Once it's blanched, you can drain the bok choy, and we'll save it for later. Now, I first put the bok choy into a bowl, but I do want to let it dry out a little bit, so I decided to eventually pour that onto a tray in which I drained it out, and then I left it over that tray so that it could drain more water. Filter out that water and save it too, because we need some more water to boil the duck later. Let the wok dry, and then add the mushrooms. Add no or very little oil at this stage, as we want to cook out the water from the mushrooms. This will take a couple minutes. You can add some salt halfway through, just to get more water out, and also to season the mushrooms. Once the water's been cooked out, you can pour in that oil, about a tablespoon, heat it up, and you can start cooking the fragrance out of those mushrooms. The mushrooms can only become fragrant after you've cooked out most of the water, so it's critical that you start by cooking it without oil. We'll add the bok choy back in. And stir fry that. Wok on maximum heat now. Nothing will burn or stick to the wok due to the moisture of the bok choy, lubricating the wok. We'll tilt the wok to the side just to give it a nice char. Reduce the heat. Add about a tablespoon of oyster sauce for the savory flavor. And stir that into the vegetables. Turn the heat back up, and then add up that 20 grams of minced garlic. And stir fry into the vegetables to give it that fragrance. We only do this at the end because we want to preserve that natural, fresh fragrance of the garlic. Alright, that's done. Reduce the heat, and then we can plate up and serve these vegetables. Alright, clean up the wok and add a little bit of oil. Maybe about 4 tablespoons. Or 5. Let that heat up a little bit. We'll lubricate the wok once again. We're now going to deep fry those eggplants. So be careful of the oil splattering on you here. But essentially, we just need enough oil to fry those eggplants. We're not really deep frying them here. This is shallow frying, I should say. They only take a couple minutes to cook. If you don't want the eggplants to absorb too much oil, it is imperative that you make sure the oil is hot before you put the eggplants in. Or you could steam the eggplant pieces, although that takes a little bit longer. We'll drain out the eggplants after they've been fried until slightly softened. We'll add those back in at the end. With the remaining oil, we'll add in our chopped up duck fat as well as the green Sichuan peppercorns that were prepared earlier. The green Sichuan peppercorns will reduce the stench from the duck fat. Saute that duck fat for a few minutes. Now, of course, that will release its own fat as well. You can remove the duck fat at this point if you like to add some crispy cracklings to your dish, but in this case, I'll leave them in. I'll just drain out some of the excess oil that we have here, because we don't need it now, but we will need it later. Add in your 1 kilogram of chopped up duck, or chicken, or pork ribs, and then fry it off with the remaining oil. Turn the heat back up here. We'll add about 2 tablespoons of cooking wine to get rid of that gamey smell. Then we'll add in our spices. We'll stir fry those in for the fragrance. Just fry the duck together with the spices until the meat is no longer pink. And then we'll add in 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce for color, and 2 tablespoons of light soy sauce for savory flavor. Stir that in. And now we'll add back that water from blanching the bok choy. It's slightly green in color due to the green pigments, but don't worry because this has no effect on the taste or the color of the broth, as you can see here. We can turn off the exhaust hood at this point. Bring the water to the boil. We'll just stir that around a little bit. You can see some of the foam coming out. That's actually from the duck, and we want to remove that. We'll add in a few slices of ginger and spring onions, just to further get rid of any gamey or off flavors. And once it's boiling, we'll just skim off the foam. This is why you want to have a larger quantity of water, so that when you skim off the foam, you're not taking off too much sauce or flavor that would leave the duck bland in the middle. Let that boil, just to reduce the water for about 5 minutes, uncovered. After that, you can cover it and let it braise for another 15 minutes or so, at the minimum. So in total, we would have braised this duck for about 20 minutes to give it a base flavor and get it tender. If you like it more tender, you can braise it for half an hour or more, but keep in mind that it may get too salty if you're not careful. So you may use less soy sauce if you're not sure. Prod the duck with chopsticks to check for tenderness and then drain the duck. Pick up the pieces and put them in the same bowl as the fried eggplants. Okay, once all the duck is out, you can strain some of that braising liquid. We will need some of that later, so don't throw it away. Alright, to the clean wok, add a little bit of oil. That might have been 2 tablespoons. And then we add in the chopped ginger, garlic, and chilies, and stir-fry those until they're fragrant. Now, when the garlic is in big pieces like this, it'll nicely caramelize later and turn soft, so don't worry about that. We'll add in the dry chilies for further fragrance. We'll add in the red bell peppers and stir-fry them a little bit just to get them slightly cooked. But we do want to maintain their crunchy texture, so don't cook them for too long. After that, add the duck and eggplants into the wok. Turn the heat up, and from this point on, we'll keep the heat high. We'll now add 50 grams of chopped spicy hot pot base. This will further enhance the spicy flavor of the duck. Add a little bit more of that braising liquid just to get that duck a nice sheen and to thicken the sauce a little bit. There is no need to add cornstarch because the collagen from those duck bones will have naturally thickened that sauce. Finally, add in the green leaves of the leeks and stir fry for a little bit, just to wilt them slightly. Again, you can tilt the wok to give them a little bit more of a char. And then we'll stir fry that. Now, I didn't do this, but as you can see, I have some black vinegar on the side, which you can drizzle a little bit of into the wok at that point to enhance the flavor. Finally, get out the hot plate with the onions and leeks on it and pour a little bit of oil and just distribute that oil over the onions. Those are only half the onions that I cooked or prepared earlier. We're gonna add in some of that duck. Remember, you can save the other half of the onions and leeks for your second meal, since what I'm serving right now is just half of what I've cooked. Finally, spoon over some of the sauce on that duck. And once again, let me just show you how nice that looks when it's sizzling on the hot plate like that. I've got some rice on the side, some vegetables, and yeah, that's the meal, ready to serve.